Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Austria once again and we're going to have a look at yet another one of the Hans beers. So first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to Hans Feigl, my Austrian beer mule living in Vienna. It's thanks to him that from now on you guys are going to get to enjoy a steady stream of Austrian reviews here on the channel. As I've told you previously, Austrian beer is very difficult to come across unless you're actually in the country itself. So it's always cool to have people in my Beer Mule network who can help me out with facilitating these reviews. But you may have seen recently Hans sent me a box filled with mainly Vienna lagers from the little microbreweries in the Vienna area. And these have been really interesting to work my way through so far. There are a few other things in there which you'll see as well, but I've been really enjoying getting more acquainted with the Vienna lagers over the last little while, and I'm sure we will do a few different beer styles over the coming months and years as well, actually. But yeah, big thank you to Hans once again for making this review and the other recent Austrian reviews possible, and I'm sure we will have more in the future, like I said, and I hope that you guys down in Austria are enjoying this little mini-series that we're doing as well. So yeah, for this one then, we are going to stick to the Vienna area. We're going to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before, but these guys seem to be quite highly regarded, so curious to see what this one has in store for us. For this review then, we are going to try my first beer from Muttermilch Vienna Brewery, to give them their full name. And this beer is called the Wiener Opi, or Wiener Opi, I guess we could say as well. But however you pronounce it, this particular beer comes in at 6% ABV. It's a Vienna lager, or an Imperial Vienna lager as they're calling it, and I'm curious to see what it has in store for us, because it is a little bit stronger than the ones we've had from the other breweries so far. So yeah, fingers crossed this is another good beer, and hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and always cool to introduce new breweries to you here on the channel as well. So let's see how we get on. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Muttermilch. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Austrian beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but quite regularly at the moment. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Muttermilch Vienna Brewery then. So Muttermilch, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Vienna, and it's part of the Beerlovers company, which is a beer shop on Gumpendorfstraße in the city centre. So this company was founded back in 2005 by Marcus Betts, who is a trained sommelier, and it's actually quite impressive when you look at the pictures of it. Apparently they stock somewhere in the region of 1,500 different beers. But this shop sells craft beer, obviously, home brewing ingredients and equipment, and it's run various workshops both on beer education and home brewing. But they built a brewery in the shop's basement in 2017 with Maria Ebner coming in as the head brewer, and over the years her beers won a number of awards, but then she left the company in 2019 to be replaced by Carl Carrigal, who had previously brewed cider with Blackstock, although prior to this he had quite a considerable brewing experience within the beer industry. But the brew kit that they have in this basement is 2,500 litres, and the beer is served both in bottles like this one and on tap at the shop. You can also get growlers and things like that to take away from what I've seen. But the name Muttermilch, or breast milk as it would be in English, is supposed to signify the best quality of all kinds. But the crown symbol of the brewery is also intended to signify community and tradition, and the artwork on these beers obviously is very distinctive, and this is from Magdalena Meirer apparently. But as of July 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 30 different kinds of beer, and it is obviously just a very small operation. But I think when I do make it down to Vienna again, I'll need to have a little look at this place and maybe film a little out and about video. Actually, that would be very cool to do one there. But as I say, very impressive selection of beers in the shop, and I'm sure we could find a number of Austrian breweries in there that would be very interesting to review on the channel, of course. I do wonder actually if that's maybe where Hans picked up a few of the beers that he sent me, come to think of it. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Muttermilch Vienna Brewery for the moment, or Beerlovers Company, I guess we can say as well. But if you want to learn more about these guys, I'll put the links to both in the video description below. And you can of course check out that brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Muttermilch pages on Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that they've released. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about them for the moment. So just to let you have a little brief look at the artwork on this before we open it up there. You can see the artwork is really nice on this one there. You can see the crown that I was talking about. This is the Muttermilch symbol, of course, and that is also, the Muttermilch crown is also on the bottle cap there. The bottle is sweating, of course, a little bit because we've got the wonderful Swedish summer heat here. But yeah, this one, it was Specialbier of 2020. I think this one was brewed at the end of 2020. So yeah, I've had this one sitting for a little while. I should have reviewed this a little bit earlier, but you know, it probably will hold up pretty well, but we will make sure and get another beer from these guys at some point in the future. But this beer was actually a limited edition, so very cool. But yeah, lovely bottle cap on this one at 330 millilitres, and when I was looking at the prices of these beers on beerlovers.at, it was actually I think it was coming in about €3 or something for a bottle like this. €3, €3.50 for these Muttermilch beers. So yeah, that translates to roughly about £3 sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of $4.25, $4.50 American for those of you watching in different parts. But it actually says on the back here that this one has vanilla pods in it. So yeah, it says the ingredients here in this one as malt, hops, yeast, raisins and vanilla pods. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. But it says, finally, Wiener Opi is visiting his shining amber cheeks. We serve biscuits, raisins, caramel and vanilla oats, brewed strongly in tradition in the name of the foam crown. So yeah, that sounds pretty good. But like I said, 6% Vienna lager, this one. So let's get it out and get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Yeah, and it's behaving itself. So there we go. Let's get this guy out and into the glass. A 6% Vienna lager with vanilla pods and raisins added into it. And I'll tell you something, upon opening that, you can smell the vanilla. So this one is definitely a little bit less, I guess, conventional than the other ones we've reviewed so far. But yeah, it's nice to be working my way through these Austrian beers at last. I've had these sitting for a little while, and it's just, you know, just other things like Swedish exams and stuff like this had gotten in the way of me working through these beers and having time to write up the notes and things for you guys. But yeah, anyway, here we go. So, having got the beer out and into the glass, this one's a lovely, very rich, kind of coppery colour. It's almost the same colour that you'd expect from some of these West Coast double IPAs, in fact. So yeah, lovely, very dark. Coppery colour, this one. You can see that the beer is poured with a little bit over a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of very light sort of fawn coloured head. That is going to fade away though quite soon. You can kind of see it already. That is going to fade away quite soon to just be a very thin foamy layer. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there. But I mean, overall, it looks very nice. It's got a lovely kind of natural haze to it, this as well, actually. It looks great. But yeah, as I said, I think it's fair to describe this one as a nice kind of very dark amber or rich sort of copper colour. So remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on one, the type of malts that you use. That determines the magnitude of the colour. Two, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. And barrel aging and adjuncts, of course, will play a role in this as well. When this beer has a little bit of raisin in it, I would suspect that potentially some of the darkness to the colour in this beer is due to the raisins. Fruit adjuncts can affect the colour of beer quite dramatically, actually. But yeah, nothing too surprising about this beer. In terms of its appearance, this rich kind of copper colour is a little bit darker than some of the Vienna lagers we've come across in the past, but it's certainly not out with the realms of possibility. So remember as well that this beer is a lager, which means cold temperature fermentation, bottom fermenting yeast in other words. So these fermentations take place between 8 to about 12 degrees, if memory serves me correctly, compared to ales, which are usually about 15 to 18 degrees, top fermenting beers. But yeah, there's lots of different types of lagers, of course, and there's usually similarities between different things. So in Germany, of course, you've got the blonde Helles, the mahogany Dunkel, the black Schwarzbier. Then you've got things like the box, you know, the Doppelbox, the Maibox, the Hellerbox, and things like this. You've got the various kind of Franconian lagers as well, the Keller beers, and all of these kind of things. In the Czech Republic, you've got similar. You have the blonde Svetli, the amber Letzak. You have the black Tmave, of course. You've got the Pilsners as well, which originate in the Czech Republic. You've got the Vienna lagers, which are these kind of rich amber lagers. So I guess when we're talking about Vienna lagers, there's probably two comparable styles. So you've got the German Märzen, which I would say is a little bit more biscuity and grainy, and generally speaking, German lagers tend to lean towards that kind of crisper side of things. And then you've also got the Czech Letzak as well, which is a little bit more kind of bready and yeasty. Czech lagers, generally speaking, do lean towards that more bready, yeasty kind of thing. In my experience, the Vienna lagers tend to be a little bit more sort of oily in a sense. So you do get a nice bit of breadiness out of them, but they've got a bit more of an oily brown sugar, and they do have a wee bit of the biscuity character, if you like, from the Märzen as well. So they've got a bit of the kind of breadiness from the Czech side, and then they've also got a bit of the crispness from the German side, and then a bit more of a kind of oily, brown sugary sort of thing. That's my experience. But as we've been learning when we've been working through the beers that we've had so far in this little series that Hans sent me, there's a few different variations there. You can find that some of them are a bit more grainy, some of them can be a little bit toasty even and things. So I have to say, with this one having a few adjuncts in it, the vanilla pods and the raisins, I'm very curious to see what it has in store for us. But let's check out the aroma then before we have a taste of it and see how we go. So yeah, that does smell very nice actually. You can smell a slightly stronger kind of booziness in this one. And at 6%, you know, it's not the booziest of styles, but it is definitely worth noting. You can smell a little bit of a stronger kind of boozy character to this one. But yeah, the backbone of this beer is really, really nice. It's kind of what you would expect from the Vienna lager style, but it's just got a little bit more kind of oomph to it and a wee bit more kind of smoothness and sweetness. So I really like that. But yeah, on the malty side of things, so you can definitely smell that lovely kind of wholemeal brown bready backbone that you expect of the Viennese lager. You have that you can get that nice kind of bread crusty element in there as well. You do get a little bit of that slightly more grainy bread crusty sort of thing, but it's weird. It's not weird, it's kind of unusual because you can smell that sweet vanilla just almost infused into the bread actually, which is really, really interesting. So of course, within that bready aroma, you are getting one or two kind of woody elements out of it too. And I think in a way, when they've got vanilla in this, I think that amplifies a slight kind of woody impression out of this beer. So yeah, the backbone of this beer is unmistakably a sort of brown bready kind of thing. This is the trademark aroma and flavour, if you like, of the Vienna malts. But yeah, it's lovely, and the backbone of this beer is very much brown, sort of wholemeal kind of bread, some bread crusty notes in there, a bit of a woody undertone, and you can feel the vanilla kind of mixed into that. So yeah, I really like how that goes together in this one. But yeah, on top of that kind of brown bread, of course, you can smell that it does sort of, you know, the bread does thicken up, I think, and mellow out a little bit the more that you smell of this beer. Of course, your nose adjusts to these things all the time, but on top of that, you do get a nice little bit of a kind of oily brown sugar in the beer actually, in the way that the brown sugars that you get out of this one really remind me of a cereal that I used to eat at home called Sugar Puffs. I don't know how good a reference that is for Austrians or Swedes or whoever, but back home in Scotland we had this cereal called Sugar Puffs, and the aroma from the brown sugars really reminds me of that. So yeah, it's got a little bit of a nice kind of honey quality to it, so I really like that. You do get a bit of a straight up caramel in this one. You can smell a straight up sweet caramel in there. There's a little bit of a kind of lighter honey quality, like I say, a little bit of a kind of honey caramelly wafer sort of thing, but you do get a nice kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity element to this beer as well. So I really like how that goes together. So it's got these big bready notes that you get out of, that you typically get out of this style, and it's also got that good that kind of nice spectrum, if you like, of the brown sugar. So oily caramel, a little bit of honey, and then you've also got that kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of thing coming out of this beer too. So yeah, everything that you would expect of the style. And I would say that the bready aspects of this beer come across as kind of smooth, but again, slightly sweet at the same time. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business. So big thumbs up to Muttermilch for this one actually. So yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side and the fruity side of this beer then before we taste it. So hoppy side of things is pretty much what you would expect. So there's a nice little bit of a kind of smooth earthiness to this one, and it will, I'm guessing it'll either be using an Austrian hop or something like Czech Satz or German Hallertau or Tettnanger, potentially something a wee bit more, you know, like it could use a little bit like Northern Brewer or something, because it comes across as quite fruity. That's a very popular hop in Doppelbox actually. But yeah, it's got a lovely kind of smooth earthiness to it. There's a nice wee bit of a kind of you do get a nice little bit of a brighter floral aromaticity, but at the same time it's quite smooth. I have to remember as well that this beer is a couple of months old, so some of the hoppy character will have dropped out of it actually. But you do have a little bit of a kind of lighter kind of grassiness on the very front of the nose with this beer as well. So yeah, a little bit of a more kind of floral aromatic sort of thing to it. I wouldn't say spicy, it's actually quite smooth, but then you've also got a little bit of a lighter kind of as I say, a little bit of a lighter grassy note to it, and there's just a wee touch of zestiness in this beer as well. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business from the hoppy side of things, but nothing too surprising on that from that perspective. But yeah, on the fruity side of the beer then, so you can definitely smell that slightly sharper raisiny note coming out of it. There's a lovely little bit of a kind of you do get an almost little bit of a kind of fruit loafy, kind of slightly cakey element coming out of the beer as well. You can smell that underneath the fruits, but yeah, sharper raisins. There is a wee bit of a slightly datey kind of sultana-like note in there, to be clear. To me, raisins are, you know, dark, purple, dried purple grapes, but the sultanas are the dried white and green grapes. So you've got a mix of things going on in there, a little bit of a datey character, as I said, and then as you as you move further forward in that, you've got a juicy kind of figgy quality, and you do get, you know, little hints of a kind of there is a wee bit of a kind of blackcurranty, blackberry sort of thing to this one as well. So I do like how the fruity side of this beer goes together. It's got a little bit of a bit of that big sharp juicy red fruit, but then you're also getting some of the dried fruits coming out from underneath it as well. You get a slight little bit of pear, I think, coming out of this beer as well, which is typical for the style in my experience so far. But yeah, take a little bit of time to ponder over the aroma of this one before you get stuck in. This is really nice because of the, and really interesting I should say as well, because of the two adjuncts that are in it. But I think it's about time that we have a taste of this beer then. So yeah, this one is the Wiener Opi, coming in at 6% ABV, an Imperial Vienna Lager, as these guys are calling it. But this one comes to you from Muttermilch Vienna Brewery at the Beerlovers store on Gumpendorfstrasse in the city. Thank you again to Hans for making this review possible. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. So, that is again very, very nice. This one, first impression of this is very sweet and very kind of slick in a sense. But yeah, another solid beer. Definitely another solid beer. Absolutely. Thumbs up to Muttermilch for this. I'll need to try a few of their others for sure. I will say as well, carbonation in this one is a little bit more active, but I think that might be potentially my fault because this beer has sat for a little bit, of course, but it's still in really, really nice and drinkable condition actually. But yeah, this is a solid beer, so thumbs up to them. It certainly makes me want to try a few of their other things too. But yeah, interesting. So this beer, I will say, there's nothing, you can see the glass, it's just sweating, it's so hot in Sweden these days, craziness. But yeah. But yeah, it's a lovely example of the style, this one. It's not quite as bready. First impression of it is that it's not quite as bready as you would think from the aroma, and the vanilla is a wee bit more pungent in this one. It's got a bit more of a woody vanilla presence, and then the fruity side of things is a little bit more kind of prominent as well actually. So yeah, the adjuncts actually do take a fair bit of focus in this beer, and the other things that are going on are kind of sitting in the background, adding the depth to the beer, if that makes sense. So yeah, this is an interesting one. You can feel that's a little bit more boozy as well, even though, you know, I think we've had one of the other beers that we had was 5.5%, so only a 0.5% difference, but I think it must be the adjuncts that are making it, you know, making quite a bit of difference here. But yeah, this is really interesting actually. So let's try and break down the flavour of this beer for you and describe it a little bit more kind of succinctly, if we can say that. So yeah, backbone of this beer then, you can feel that nice, smooth, brown bready quality just blanketing the middle and the back third of your tongue. Sitting underneath that, of course, you've got a little bit of a kind of woody layer in there. So you've got that nice, smooth, woody layer coming out of this one. When you go onto the front half of that middle third of your palate, then you can definitely get a little bit more of a kind of smoother, sweeter, woody element there, and you get some vanilla elements out of it. That's where you can feel the vanilla sitting in this one. It almost gives you the impression of being very, very slightly nutty as well. But yeah, smooth brown bready character on that middle third of the palate. A little bit of a kind of, as we say, a nice kind of vanilla element to it, and one or two kind of nutty things there. But on top of that, as I say, you've got that nice kind of smooth, almost slightly sweet brown wholemeal bready character to it. Either end of that middle third of your palate, you have a lovely kind of bread crusty element to it as well, which I really, really like. And then in the middle of the palate, you've got a nice kind of circle. You do have that kind of circle right in the middle of your tongue, and that's where all the kind of brown sugars in this beer sit. So if you go to the epicenter of that, the dead center, that's where you get the kind of more highly concentrated caramelly notes in there, which I do quite enjoy. And as you move further out from that, the beer becomes a little bit more sort of honey-like. It's like a sort of caramel wafer almost, but definitely some of these lighter kind of honey elements to it. And as you reach the extremities of the palate, so when you reach the extremities of that middle third of your palate, that's when you get the more McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of elements to this one too. So I really like how that goes together. So yeah, this one's very interesting from that perspective for sure. So yeah, this one is really interesting in a sense. This beer has a completely different vibe to it, I would say, from the other ones. This one comes across as a lot more ale-like actually, in its kind of feeling and its sort of mouthfeel and all this kind of thing, compared to the other ones that we've had so far. And I think that's the adjuncts that are giving you that slightly more kind of oily character. But as I say, remember this one is a little bit boozier, so you need to keep that in mind with this. But it feels, in a lot of ways, it still feels like it's kind of traditional in a sense, but it's more the further you go into the aftertaste, that's when you start to feel the adjuncts taking a proper grip of the beer. So when you have the liquid on your tongue almost, that's when it feels a little bit more traditional. It's when you move into the aftertaste that the vanilla and the sort of fruity side of the beer really start to deviate a little bit from what we've had from a Vienna lager before. So that's kind of interesting, but I think we've described the middle third of the palate quite well so far. But let's focus on the back third of the tongue then with this one. Let's focus on that. So border region between the middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel a nice little bit of a kind of bready build up on the palate there, which is very nice. So you get a little bit of that bready build up in the border region. You can feel a little bit more of a bread crusty kind of thing, but at the same time it's got a few little kind of honey biscuity elements there as well. But the back third of your palate, you can feel there's more of you get a bit more of that kind of bread crusty base, and it's slightly more grainy the further back on the palate you go. You get a slightly thicker kind of brown bready quality sitting on top of that. Then on top of that layer you get the more airy, yeasty bready elements of the beer, so you can feel like a more light, airy sort of brown bready character there. So when you start at the back of the palate in this one, you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller, but it condenses down. Then as you go into that middle third of your palate, you can feel the flavours are a little bit more condensed down and squashed together. So I really like how this beer I really like how this beer goes about its business in that sense. The malty side of things is really nicely done. But like I say, this one, it deviates quite a bit from what we've had in the previous Vienna lagers, I think, because of the vanilla, the presence of the vanilla. So yeah, and it's in the aftertaste that really starts to take a stronger hold on the beer. But on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice kind of smooth earthiness out of this one. As you move further forward, you've got a little bit of a kind of herbal quality in there, and as you move towards the front corners of the palate, it's a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic. It's got a little bit of a kind of spicy sort of thing. So you've got a nice little bit of floral aromaticity. So you do have a nice little bit of that kind of floral aromaticity, which comes out of it really nicely. But I wouldn't say that it's overly kind of spicy or anything. It's quite bright actually. So I do wonder if it's maybe German hops that are in this. But again, you can feel that this beer, because it is a little bit older, we should say that, so it comes across as a little bit smoother. But I do get a wee bit of that kind of brightness out of it. So I do wonder, could they have used a little bit of Northern Brewer or something like that in here? I don't know. But remember, there are Austrian hops as well that I'm not so familiar with. It would be interesting to see if there are any Austrian single hop IPAs or something like that. So if you do know any of those, let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to learn a little bit more about the Austrian hop varieties. But yeah, around the front curve of the palate on this one, you've got a little bit of a lighter sort of grassy. You do get a little bit of a lighter grassy floral aromaticity to this one. So yeah, it goes together very, very nicely from that perspective, in fact. But yeah, kind of typical noble type hop flavours on this one. But let's focus on that front third of the palate then and the fruity aspects of the beer. So yeah, on the fruity side of things then, so on the fruity side of things then, so border region between the kind of border region between the front and middle third of your palate. Again, you've got a little bit of a bready build up in there. You get a wee bit more bread crust, but you still get some of those kind of lighter honey elements to it. But the base of that front third of your palate is definitely the smooth kind of brown bready elements there. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a little bit of that kind of fruit loafy kind of thing, but you can feel on top of that there's a little bit of a sharper raisin. There's a few, but underneath you get the more kind of lighter sultana type qualities in there, maybe a little bit of a very slightly datey kind of thing. But as you move further forward into that, into the very front half, into the front half of that front third of your tongue, it starts to get a little bit more kind of figgy in a sense. And yeah, you can feel a little bit of the vanilla creeping forward from further back on the palate. You can feel that the bready notes in that base of the front third of your palate has got a little bit of the vanilla in there, but the raisins, the juicy raisins, sit on top of that. But like I say, you start to get a wee touch of a kind of blackcurranty note on the front half of that front third of your palate as well. And there's one or two little peary esters. So yeah, bit of raisin, bit of a kind of sultana type quality, one or two datey elements, a little bit of fig and blackcurrant, and then as I say, a little bit of an oily pear in the front part of the palate as well. So this beer is really interesting on the fruity side of things. It's got a little bit more diversity to it, and it feels a little bit more sort of oily in that sense compared to the other ones we've had so far too. But yeah, I think this is quite interesting. The other thing with this beer as well is just the smoothness of the bread is kind of interesting too, because it does feel a little bit smoother than the other ones. The other ones had a little bit more of a kind of crusty, crispy sort of thing, but the more you drink of this beer, the smoother the bread feels. But maybe that's the influence of the vanilla. We have to think about that too. But yeah, this is a really interesting one, this is more of a sipper than the other ones. I mean, because of the adjuncts, I think it's a wee bit more complex. But yeah, it's definitely got a little bit of a kind of ale type quality to it, to be honest with you, and a wee bit of an almost, that kind of balky type feel. So this is a really interesting one, and I think that's probably why Hans chose to send me that, because this had the two adjuncts added into it. But yeah, I think we can round off the tasting section of the video there for this one. This is a very quirky Vienna lager, that's for sure. But yeah, to round off the review with the mouthfeel then, like I say, this beer, it is still quite light bodied. It's kind of, if we're talking about on the general spectrum, it's kind of bottom end of mid bodied, top end of light bodied, I would say. But yeah. Oh, my phone. Oh, this is annoying. My alarm keeps going off on this phone these days. Oh, get lost. But yeah. Shut up. Oh, come on. Annoying. Kept pressing it and it just doesn't go off. Anyway, but yeah, like I say, this beer, it's kind of top end of light-bodied, bottom end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is a little bit crisper in this one, but I think that's maybe because it's been sitting a little while. But yeah, malt base, very, very smooth. As I say, it does get slightly sweeter because of the adjuncty type qualities there. You've got a lovely kind of breadiness to this one. I think the vanilla sort of amplifies the smoothness of the bread in there. Good bit of brown sugar, a wee bit oily, but at the same time you get some of these more honey, wafery, biscuity sort of things coming out of it. So yeah, I really like how that side of the beer goes together as well. But on the, as we say, on the hoppy side of things, I think this is a fairly standard kind of 20, 50, 20 IBUs. It's probably about right, yeah, 15 or 20 IBU lager beer, this one. And the fruity side of things, it's got a nice little bit of that kind of dried fruit character to it, but a little bit of an oiliness to it also. And the raisins, you can feel the raisins give the beer just a little touch more kind of sharpness and things too. But yeah, I do like how this one goes about its business in that sense. A really interesting Vienna lager, this beer. So yeah, I think we can leave it there. So this one, yeah, was the Wiener Opi, 6% Imperial Vienna lager with vanilla and raisins added into it by Muttermilch Vienna Brewery at the Beerlovers store on Gumpendorfer Strasse in the city. So yeah, this has been an interesting review for me, so I hope that you guys have enjoyed it too. But yeah, we can leave it at that for this one. I do apologise for my alarm going off in this. That's been happening in a couple of reviews recently, which is annoying. I need to look at what's going on with that phone. I turn it off and it still goes. It still goes off, so maybe it's time for a new phone. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Muttermilch. We will return to these guys at some point soon. And as I say, let me know some other Austrian beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. But yeah, this one was the Vienna Opi, 6% Imperial Vienna Lager with vanilla and raisins added into it from Muttermilch in Vienna. Thank you again to you guys for watching. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and thank you again to Hans for making this review possible. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.